How did you get from where you started as a kid to where you are now?
Hard work.
Kid Rock's life isn't just about selling millions of records or partying on tours. Behind the rock star image lies a series of heartbreaks and crushing setbacks that shaped his journey. He grew up with privilege, yet found himself at war with public opinion. Slapped with record label rejections, slammed by critics, and haunted by personal betrayals, Kid Rock's story is full of unexpected loss and grief. Prepare to discover the raw truth behind the man who controversies couldn't break. Early career struggles. Kid Rock's early days in music were filled with more hardships than most people realize, especially given his comfortable upbringing. He was born Robert James Ritchie in 1971, and his father owned car dealerships and an orchard. Though his childhood did not mirror the rough streets of Detroit, Kid Rock developed a fascination with hip-hop in the 1980s, teaching himself how to breakdance, rap, and DJ. He performed at local parties and hip-hop gatherings, which helped him form connections in the Detroit music scene. One of those connections was with rapper D-Nice, who introduced him to Jive Records, a major label that also had ties to big hip-hop names. This seemed like a golden opportunity until Kid Rock released his debut album, Grits, Sandwiches for Breakfast, in 1990. The record's explicit lyrics landed a radio station in hot water with the FCC after it aired one of his songs uncensored. This scandal left Jive uncomfortable with Kid Rock's style and content. Not long after, Kid Rock found himself dropped from the label, a crushing moment that made him question if he would ever break through. However, his determination never wavered, even though mainstream radio hardly touched his music due to the extreme profanity. As an underground act, he toured small clubs, built a cult following, and used every chance he got to grow his audience. He released 2 more albums, The Polyfuse Method and Early Morning Stoned Pimp, that allowed him to hone his genre-blending style of hip-hop, rock, and country. Despite receiving little support from major outlets, his fan base began to grow through word of mouth and relentless touring. These tough circumstances shaped the heartbreak behind his story. Kid Rock had a unique sound and an intense stage presence. Yet big labels were not ready to bet on him again until Atlantic Records took a chance in the late 1990s. His self-confidence and give-no-shits attitude drove him to keep pushing forward when many others would have given up. At the time, it might have looked like he was on the fast track to fame, but every step came with enormous personal cost and risk. The heartbreak of Kid Rock's early career lies in how close he came to being written off before anyone truly knew him. He fought for years in dive bars, overcame label rejections, and faced critics who mocked his brash style. Yet, he refused to give up on his dreams. These struggles became the building blocks of his future success, but they also lingered, reminding him that the road to stardom can be paved with disappointment, doubt, and the weight of constant misunderstanding. Musical reinvention and uniqueness. Kid Rock's career stands out for the way he has fearlessly blended hip-hop, rock, and country to become one of music's most surprising success stories. He grew up on his father's orchard, far from the rough streets many assumed shaped him. Yet, his journey into hip-hop began in the 1980s, when he discovered breakdancing and started DJing, performing at local parties in Detroit. This love of hip-hop merged over time with his interest in rock and the twang of country, creating a sound that was both strange and unique. Despite initial comparisons to rappers like Vanilla Ice, Kid Rock's music was far more edgy and explicit. His first album, Grits, Sandwiches for Breakfast, was so profane that it landed a radio station in trouble with the FCC, resulting in a hefty fine. This bad press led Jive Records to drop him, a move they would come to regret once he found international fame. The difficulties early in his career only strengthened his resolve to stand out rather than blend in. Kid Rock's second and third albums, The Polyfuse Method and Early Morning Stoned Pimp, continued to sharpen his rough style, mixing everything from rap to rock riffs. Though radio shied away due to the gritty language, Kid Rock cultivated an underground following by touring relentlessly. By the late 1990s, Atlantic Records saw his potential and signed him just before he dropped Devil Without a Cause, which sold millions of copies and propelled him into the mainstream. What makes Kid Rock's path so heartbreaking is that his musical gifts often get overshadowed by controversy. Critics have pointed to his Confederate flag controversy and outspoken attitude towards society as proof that he courts trouble. Yet the heart of his genius lies in a willingness to shift genres and make them his own. Few artists can claim success in rap, rock, the country, and even a bit of pop influence, but Kid Rock has done it. He has performed alongside names like Run DMC, Metallica, and Sheryl Crow, proving that he fits in just about anywhere, even as he remains impossible to fully pin down. This constant reinvention underlines the tragedy at the core of Kid Rock's story. Each bold leap forward in his sound is met with pushback from those who question his motives, wonder about his roots, or criticize his politics. While he thrives on blending styles and springing surprises, it has also isolated him from parts of the industry and even parts of the city he once called home. The heartbreak lies in watching a musician of such raw talent fight a never-ending battle for acceptance, all while forging ahead on his own singular path. Whatever one may think of him, Kid Rock's ability to remain fresh and stay true to himself is both unique and undeniably human. Unfiltered public persona. Kid Rock's unfiltered public persona has both fueled his fame and served as a source of heartbreak. From the moment he burst onto the music scene, he carried a bold, nothing-to-lose spirit, saying exactly what was on his mind and acting without fear of judgment. That raw energy drew throngs of fans, yet it also brought him constant controversy. Over the years, newspaper headlines and gossip sites have regularly featured Kid Rock's offstage antics, from bar brawls to heated comments aimed at celebrities, politicians, and anyone else in his crosshairs. One of the earliest examples of his outspoken nature appeared when he used the Confederate flag during performances. Critics labeled it insensitive and harmful, but Kid Rock lashed back, repeating that he never meant hatred or racism. His short, crude one-liners only inflamed protesters, making headlines across the country. These battles overshadowed his musical talents, with many focusing more on his brash remarks than his innovations in blending hip-hop, rock, and country. He has also taken aim at media figures like Oprah Winfrey, even slurring her name on stage while apparently intoxicated. This outburst caused uproar, but Kid Rock doubled down, refusing to change his tone or issue a gentle apology. Some say his refusal to back down comes from a desire to stay authentic, but others see it as reckless and arrogant. Either way, these controversies create a steady stream of news that overshadows his actual music. A brazen onstage presence has long defined him. Fans rave about his energetic shows, where he struts around in flashy outfits and whips the crowd into a frenzy. Yet, his tough guy swagger often spills out into real life, leading to public meltdowns and fistfights. Perhaps the most infamous was his brawl with Tommy Lee at the VMAs, forever etched into pop culture lore. Beyond that, incidents at restaurants and nightclubs painted a picture of a hot-tempered star, quick to throw punches or hurl insults. This unfiltered persona, while thrilling to many, has left a trail of heartbreak. Kid Rock's image as an unapologetic rebel clashes with the fact that he actually cares deeply about his craft and how he is seen by real fans. Critics may claim he courts controversy for attention, but those close to him suggest that he simply cannot hold his tongue when provoked. The result is a complicated figure who is both loved for speaking his mind and condemned for pushing boundaries too far. Feuds and public fights. Kid Rock has never been shy about letting his emotions run wild, and that has landed him in one feud after another throughout his career. From celebrity run-ins to intense backstage arguments, these public fights have played a huge role in shaping the heartbreak that surrounds his story. Even during his early years, his no-filter attitude drew people in, but it also stirred up trouble. Fans loved his rebellious image, yet critics saw him as someone who thrived on shock value more than genuine music. One of his most infamous fights occurred at a Waffle House in 2007, where a simple argument escalated into a full-blown brawl. Kid Rock ended up on probation and faced legal headaches, all because a heated exchange spiraled out of control. Around the same time, he got into a scuffle at the MTV Video Music Awards with Mötley Crüe drummer Tommy Lee, fueled by their shared connection to Pamela Anderson. These headline-grabbing incidents fed the public's appetite for drama, but overshadowed his talents as a musician. Kid Rock's feuds weren't limited to other artists. He also experienced tension with community groups and activists, especially after his use of the Confederate flag stirred anger. When the National Action Network criticized him, he fired back with short, fiery statements. Even though he eventually stopped using the flag, that did not ease the clash. Protests disrupted his appearances in Detroit, and his relationship with the city he once cherished began to crumble. The heartbreak lay in watching a hometown hero become a target of protests and public outrage. Each feud chipped away at the public's respect for him, as people questioned whether Kid Rock was just manufacturing conflict for attention or simply unable to avoid trouble. Fans who once praised his fearless attitude now found themselves defending his actions. Others walked away, deciding the drama was too much. Yet, no matter how many obstacles he faced, Kid Rock carried on with the same unapologetic fire that fueled his biggest hits. His unfiltered persona, while entertaining, was also a magnet for conflict. Behind these public fights stands a musician whose mission is to express himself without compromise. His feuds have overshadowed his music, turning him into a tabloid favorite instead of a celebrated genre bender. That is the heartbreaking tragedy at the core of Kid Rock's story, a gifted artist trapped in chaos he partly creates. Even now he tours and records, yet past battles still linger. The saddest part is that these fights might have been avoided, sparing him ongoing criticism and pain. Despite the bruises, Kid Rock endures, a fighter for better or worse, stuck in an endless ring of controversies. Confederate flag controversy. Kid Rock's connection to the Confederate flag remains one of the most painful chapters in his story, reflecting a recurring theme of rebellion mixed with deep misunderstanding. Early in his career, he used the flag as a stage prop, insisting it symbolized his wild, rebellious image rather than hatred. However, many observers felt it communicated a very different message. Protests soon followed, and Kid Rock found himself in a heated conflict with community leaders, civil rights activists, and even some longtime fans. Although he eventually stopped using the Confederate flag in 2006, lingering photos and memories fueled the anger that continued to wash over him years later. One particularly tense moment came in 2011, when Kid Rock received an award from the NAACP in Detroit. Critics claimed the group had ignored his association with the Confederate flag, while supporters argued he had quit using it long before. The tension escalated as activists staged protests, calling him out publicly and demanding he distance himself even further from all references to the flag's painful past. Kid Rock fired back, explaining that he never carried hate in his heart. But for many, the controversy had already taken root. Further clashes took shape when the National Action Network, led by Reverend Al Sharpton, spoke out against Kid Rock, intensifying the standoff. In 2015, protesters appeared outside the Detroit Historical Museum, where Kid Rock was being honored. Their goal was to draw attention to what they saw as ongoing harm caused by his earlier use of the Confederate flag. Despite having renounced it, Kid Rock's dismissive response, "Tell them to kiss my ass," only hardened the existing divide. He felt unfairly attacked, while critics believed he had shown too little remorse for a serious issue. The heartbreak surrounding Kid Rock's Confederate flag controversy lies in how it played out across his relationship with Detroit, the city he had always claimed as his own. The Motor City's residents had once rallied around him, proud of the local boy who rose to fame. Yet these protests frayed those bonds, leaving Kid Rock to feel cast aside by his hometown. In turn, he pulled back from certain Detroit projects, stating he was tired of constant criticism. Even though his career continued to flourish, a sadness remains. The artist who blended hip-hop, rock, and country with such passion found himself caught in a storm. He tried to explain, but never fully weathered. In the end, the Confederate flag controversy stands as a painful symbol of the rifts that can form between a major star and his one-time supporters, casting a long shadow over an otherwise remarkable career. Fallout with Detroit. Kid Rock always spoke with great pride about Detroit, once touting it as the city that shaped his spirit and fueled his rise to fame. He was born Robert James Ritchie, far from the rough neighborhoods that outsiders often picture when they think of Detroit. In truth, his father was a successful car dealer who also owned an orchard, meaning Kid Rock did not struggle in the ways that many Detroit locals do. Still, he identified with the city's grit and energy, merging hip-hop, rock, and country in a style that gave him a massive following. For years, he wore his Detroit roots like a badge of honor, performing with infectious enthusiasm at local events, donating to city charities, and even opening a restaurant bearing his name. Yet beneath that hometown hero image was a growing tension. One of the biggest sources of conflict revolved around the Confederate flag he once displayed on stage. Though he stopped using it in 2006 and insisted he never meant hatred, many in Detroit did not forgive or forget. In 2011, he was honored by the NAACP in Detroit, which sparked outrage. Anderson's ex-husband, Tommy Lee. The drama brought both legal and emotional turmoil, exposing the painful gap between the rock star image and a vulnerable man seeking real stability. Longtime collaborator Uncle Kracker also left Kid Rock's side to pursue his own path, creating yet another loss. While Uncle Kracker achieved some success on his own, fans felt the absence of their original spark as a duo. Meanwhile, Kid Rock's bond with Detroit, his hometown, suffered greatly when controversies over the Confederate flag led to community protests. While he'd stopped using the flag years before, photographs and old perceptions lingered, causing deep divides he struggled to mend. He faced criticism from civil rights activists, saw protests outside local museums, and felt forced to pull back from the city he once celebrated so openly. Adding to these pains were public outbursts, fueled by anger and, at times, alcohol. Slurred rants and bar fights painted a chaotic picture of a man burning the candle at both ends. Each incident sparked worry that Kid Rock's biggest battle might be with himself. Being in the spotlight amplified every mistake, making it hard to separate the musician from the scandal. Despite selling millions of albums and headlining massive tours, he found himself locked in a cycle of success followed by fresh controversy. Taken together, Kid Rock's personal and professional losses form a heartbreaking tragedy. Behind the loud music and rebellious swagger is someone who has lost friends, love, and the unconditional support of his hometown. His story is proof that fame can lift a person to incredible heights, while also creating wounds that never fully heal. Continued success. Despite controversy, Kid Rock's path has been packed with drama, yet he remains one of music's most surprising success stories. From his start as a hip-hop hopeful in the late 1980s to his reinvention as a rock and country superstar, Kid Rock has refused to slow down or tone it down. Throughout his career, controversies seemed to follow him everywhere he went. He got dropped by his first major label, Jive Records, after they were fined by the FCC for playing his explicit single on the radio. Later, he faced backlash for using the Confederate flag on stage, received criticism for wearing the American flag as a poncho, and found himself at the center of countless bar brawls and celebrity feuds. In many cases, these scandals almost overshadowed his tremendous talent and success. Yet, despite the mounting criticisms, Kid Rock has sold tens of millions of albums worldwide. He packed arenas throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, fueled by the breakout success of Devil Without a Cause, which moved over 14 million copies. He dominated MTV, performed with iconic acts like Run DMC, and even took the stage at Woodstock '99, cementing his status as a true force. His music's blend of hip-hop swagger, rock riffs, and occasional country twang set him apart from any easy comparisons, and fans responded with passion. Whether people like him or not, he has managed to keep their attention. Another part of his continued success lies in his business ventures. Kid Rock has owned restaurants, organized his own branded cruises, and jumped on social media to engage, and sometimes enrage, his followers. Even when confronted by protesters, such as those demanding apologies for his past Confederate flag use, he pushed back, often stirring up more drama. Still, he came out with a loyal fan base that isn't going anywhere. This evergreen popularity is all the more tragic, given how often his personal missteps overshadow his music. After all, here is an artist who, beneath all the rowdy behavior, shows skill at writing songs that cross genre lines in a way few have done. He could have enjoyed a smooth ride to stardom, but instead, his legacy is stained by bar fights, rant-filled videos, and a strained relationship with his one-time hometown of Detroit. In the end, Kid Rock's story is both uplifting and heartbreaking. He's a guy who manages to fill arenas and sell records, even while facing near-constant scrutiny. Viewers can't seem to look away. Some cheer him on, some criticize his every word. Through it all, Kid Rock remains firmly in the public eye, continuing his success in spite of every controversy that tries, unsuccessfully, to bring him down from some quarters. Activists saw him as a symbol of insensitivity, while others maintained he had already moved on from the flag. Matters only got worse when Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network called him out for past controversies. They protested outside the Detroit Historical Museum, urging him to further renounce any ties to the flag. Kid Rock fired back, telling critics to "kiss my ass," which deepened the rift. This fierce back and forth stained his once warm relationship with Detroit, leaving him feeling attacked by people he believed he had always supported. He had invested in local causes, championed the city's comeback, and spoken fondly of its culture. But for many, his defiance and angry words outweighed his good works. Eventually, Kid Rock chose not to renew the licensing agreement for his restaurant in Detroit and moved most of his day-to-day life to Tennessee. He made headlines by hurling insults at media figures while seemingly intoxicated on stage, further widening the gap. Some Detroit locals saw these actions as evidence that he had abandoned them, while Kid Rock felt he had simply had enough of what he viewed as endless criticism. Public intoxication and rants. Kid Rock's history of public intoxication and wild rants has added another sad layer to his already turbulent story. From early in his career, people grew used to seeing him act out in ways that mixed shock value with true frustration. Even as he climbed music charts and sold millions of albums, his habit of speaking first and thinking later became more obvious, especially when paired with alcohol. These incidents created a cycle in which fans wondered if they were watching just harmless partying or a sign of deeper struggles. One of the most notable moments of public intoxication involved Kid Rock delivering a slurred tirade against TV icon Oprah Winfrey. Whether one agrees with Oprah or not, the sight of Kid Rock stumbling around and hurling insults hit a nerve for many. Instead of a witty rebel, he came across as someone unable to control himself, and that image stuck. Some fans excused him, calling it part of his outspoken charm, but others saw a man unraveling under fame's pressure. Sadly, this wasn't an isolated event. Kid Rock's history of substance-fueled outbursts stretches back years. While his stage shows are often praised for their high energy, offstage he has been involved in barroom fights, made rude comments about other celebrities, and generally courted trouble. Each time the media pounced, adding another layer of scandal to his already controversial name. The more he fired back, the more attention he received, feeding a vicious loop that overshadowed his musical achievements. It's also important to note how these drunken rants affected his relationship with his original hometown supporters. Detroit locals once claimed him with pride, but after repeated controversies and what seemed like a never-ending supply of dramatic headlines, many felt torn. Was Kid Rock a hometown hero who just let loose sometimes? Or was he someone who repeatedly failed to respect the city's reputation? His public outbursts left many disappointed, driving a wedge between him and the place that had first embraced him. Underneath the loud behavior, there appears to be a heartbreak tied to Kid Rock's personal life. Despite fame, wealth, and a loyal group of fans, he has never been free from the light that shines on his every drunken word. The tragedy lies in how these moments have buried his genuine talent under a mountain of negative press. He's just as famous for messy rants as he is for catchy songs, and that dual identity seems to haunt him. At the end of the day, Kid Rock's path shows that success does not guarantee peace. Sometimes, the very fame that lifts a person up can also fuel their downfall, leaving a heartbreaking mess for everyone to see. Personal and professional losses. Kid Rock's path through fame has been marked by painful personal and professional losses, revealing a side to his story that many people overlook. That raw, carefree attitude on stage has often lingered in his private life, leading to quick decisions and major fallout. One early challenge came when Jive Records dropped him after the release of his debut album, leaving him unsure if he'd ever land another major deal. Though he eventually found huge success with Atlantic Records, that first loss taught him the harsh realities of the music business. It also set the stage for a career defined by risk and reward, where nothing was guaranteed. On the personal front, Kid Rock's high-profile relationship with Pamela Anderson became a frequent headline. Their romance threw him into the world of celebrity tabloids, spotlighting their intense ups and downs. The pair got married, only to see the marriage collapse within a short time. This public breakup added strain to Kid Rock's life, so much so that it even sparked arguments and a full-blown VMAs brawl with